Good afternoon, everyone. Well, my name is Douglas Johnson, and I'm going to be the host for the upcoming podcast, which you already are familiar with the name, the Psychotic Nonconformist podcast. It's going to air once a week on a Saturday morning. The first episode is going to be announced, in the next week or so, but it's probably 2 or 3 weeks still out. I would highly suggest that you visit the website at www.nonconformistpodcast.org to sign up for the newsletters and other notices that we send out. Um, it it's going to be a broad based, nonpartisan based podcast. I don't lean one way or the other. I would think that most would consider me an independent, um, but I'm also a person that recognizes that there's good leadership on both sides of uh, that aisle, or imaginary aisle, however you want to look at it. But it there's a lot of topics to discuss, and we're getting close to the next big election, and it's going to be a pivotal time. I know you hear this every 4 years that the next election is very serious, and it's it'll be catastrophic if one side or the other doesn't win. But this one is definitely unique. We face as a nation we face all kinds of very out of the ordinary and unique things going on, and we need to talk about it. We need to discuss it, analyze it, and hopefully come to a consensus on how to deal with it. It it's a mess. Between what's going on here domestically. I'm kind of lost. I brought my four-legged kids with me out here to this new spot, um, and the one Shaitan, the younger one, he likes to come up from behind and take my hat, and then he'll take it somewhere and go roll on it. That's just his thing. Eventually, he'll bring it back, but I've given up telling him no. It's pointless. But getting back to the podcast, it's it. We live in very dangerous times. Domestically, we have a leadership that's broken in pursuing an agenda that most of us do not agree with. We're not taking care of the things that we need to take care of domestically, and we're spending way too much of our resources on foreign affair matters that really we have no interest in. Um, at least not now. When our country is in such shambles, we should not be worrying about the shambles of other nations. Our roads are terrible. Our electrical grid is a mess and outdated. It we I could go on and on and on about all the things that are really wrong right now that need to be paid attention to. I'm not going to get into the UFO issue. Maybe one of the future podcasts, but it we face a lot of uncertainties, but we can make them become more certain if we can come to a consensus on a better way to pursue the changes that need to happen, because we keep doing things the same way every 4 years, and we end up having the same conversation. We keep talking about I'm 58 years old, and we we have been talking about the same problems: homelessness, um, tough on crime in some areas, and not tough enough on others. We've been debating the social service issues that our country is in need of. We keep going over and over and over the same things, and we never come to a solution. And it's time that we start coming together and coming up with some real meaningful solutions. It's like the homelessness thing. A good start would be to promote more of these mini houses and create mini house subdivisions. But the problem with that, as it is right now, is is government. The government's in the way. Zoning ordinances, townships and cities that don't want it in their area. Um, just there's a divide there that shouldn't be there, because every major city in this country has a homeless problem. Obviously, some cities are far worse than others, but uh, it's there, and it's there, and it's everywhere. So every state needs to deal with this. Where I'm at now, I'm in Red Wing, Minnesota. Um, they have done a good job of dealing with that, from what I've seen. I haven't been here long, but uh, they've done a lot better job of dealing with the homelessness. They've been doing a much better job with um, so many other things that other states seem to be stumbling with. And they, they just had a general election not too long ago that resulted in some major changes that benefited the average person in a big way. One is they actually gave people some money back. I've never seen that before. As a resident of Michigan my whole life, I've never seen Michigan give us money back, having such a surplus that they actually gave the citizens back some money at the end of the year. Uh, Here in Minnesota, they're about to do that. They had a surplus, and they're about to give some of that surplus back to the taxpayers. And that's that should be the case everywhere. There shouldn't be so many expenditures to the point where there's never a surplus. It's it's just something that I just can't cover in this initial video, because it these are issues that we need to talk about in episodes of podcasts, and zoom in on one particular topic or another. Uh, I've just thought I'd come out here, and it's a new spot for me and my four-legged kids, and try the equipment out, see how it works out here. Uh, it happens to be right across the street from the old courthouse here in Goodhue County, Minnesota, and most likely the courthouse that I'll be filing my first action in the next couple weeks against one of the major tobacco companies. Um, with that said, I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm not an attorney, and whenever you hear me discuss things on these episodes, I don't want you to take that as legal advice. I just want you to take that as information that you can either either choose to look into further, or just ignore altogether. But I, in no way, shape, or form, am providing anyone any legal advice, because that would be um, well, a violation of existing law. Um, and I know all too well about that problem, because I did it before. It reminds me of a case. It was a long time ago. My then wife knew somebody that had some serious mental struggles, and ended up getting in trouble. She was counterfeiting $20 bills, and and she didn't really like attorneys either. And she knew that my wife was married to a paralegal, and she asked if there was anything I could do. And I met with the lady, and I felt really bad for her, because she was in a lot of trouble. She was caught using a counterfeit $20 bill at a store, and that triggers a lot of problems. That's just not one jurisdiction involved. That's multiple jurisdictions involved at both the local, the state, and the federal level. And she was being investigated by all those different agencies. And at the same time, it's kind of it was a freak uh, occurrence, but I was looking for the contact information for an attorney I was trying to reach, and the uh, a lot of times, if with the computers having so much information on it as they did, even when this occurred, I would go to the state bar's website and just put in the attorney's name, and then that would pop up all their bio and give me all their contact information. Well, I went this particular night to the state bars association's database, member database, and I punched in the gentleman's name, and it said no results. And I thought, well, that's odd. And and I had his P number, so I put in his P number, and I inadvertently I transposed the number, so the number I put in came back no results found. And I thought, well, this is really strange because in Michigan, P numbers, which are what traditionally, just short for a law license in Michigan, um, they they're given out in order. So number one, I'm sure that attorney has long passed away, but when they first started licensing the practice of law, the very first attorney that was licensed was given number one, and the next attorney number two and three and four and so on. So at that point in time, when I was looking for this particular attorney's contact information, it they were in about the 30,000 numbers. So I put in like I said, I transposed the number. It came to no results found, but the number that I put in error was lower than the number for the attorney that I was trying to find, and that struck me as really odd because that should have resulted in somebody popping up, because it's either the database is either going to tell you that they're active and give you their contact information, or they're inactive and it'll give you the last known contact information, or they're deceased, or there was one other category, but you're going to get one of four results with any P number that you put in that system. So I thought, I'm going to put in a couple numbers, other numbers, just pull some out of the sky, and see what happens. After doing that for a few hours, there became a pattern where every so many numbers they would skip one, and or one would not be found, and that didn't make sense at all. For every 50 numbers that you put in, you end up with no results, with all the numbers being lower than possibly the newest attorney that just received their license. So this was theoretically not possible. It had to, all those numbers, the wrong numbers that I put in that came up with no results, should have had one of the four results. If they were deceased, and the number goes to the grave with them. And so then I met this woman with the counterfeiting case, and I thought, it's time to challenge this, because the whole practice of law, it's not like this in all states, but in Michigan, there was a big debate during one of the constitutional conventions in the 60s where a sitting circuit court judge was in debate with one of the other delegates, and they were discussing whether or not a license is required. And this judge, who was the chief judge at the time in Wayne County, said that if we banned everybody that wasn't licensed from practicing law in my courtroom, I wouldn't be able to keep up with the caseload. People many people's cases wouldn't get heard. So in the 60s, it was still widely practiced where people, even without a license, were practicing law. They were representing people in court. And, but over time, the bar associations in Michigan, and I'm sure everywhere else, just became stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where now everyone has to be licensed to represent somebody in court. But getting back to this woman in the counterfeiting, I thought, I'm thinking about this. It's time to challenge this. So I'm going to use her as a test case for this challenge. So I decided to represent her and use one of the numbers that are affiliated with no one. And when I filed pleadings with the court or the various jurisdictions that I filed, and and after filing all my notices of appearances and some other responses, I made contact with the various prosecutors and investigators at different agencies that she was in trouble with. And I was able to work out a really good plea deal for her. I had the federal agency and the state agency willing to dismiss, and I had the county prosecutor willing to accept a misdemeanor plea with no jail time. And this was all written up and presented to the court. So I appeared in court for her, I think it was her third appearance before the judge, and we entered the plea agreement. And the judge at the time, I remember him telling the client, you know, Miss Rogers, you have a very good attorney working for you. He did an amazing thing. You were in a lot of trouble. He got a lot of people off your back, and you should be very grateful. And then that hearing was concluded after the judge set a sentencing date, and I was happy. I was glad that things worked out for her the way they worked out. But in between that day and the day that her sentencing uh, arrived, there was another issue going on in my life involving a 13-year-old stepchild. And I, I got him a hot dog cart because he was having some medical issues involving ADD and ADHD and all those other acronyms that they like to put on kids these days. And he uh, he was really causing problems for his mom more than me. He was getting violent with her, and we ended up sending him to a hospital where they kept him a couple weeks. And then I remember picking him up when they discharged him. The poor kid looked like a zombie. I mean, he was just he was nice and mellow. He was no longer violent and being argumentative with his mother, but he he just I looked at him and I was really sad for him. I thought this we can't keep him like this. I mean, he'll never. He had such potential. I didn't want to see him to grow up on the medications they had him on. Um, I really had other. He was such a bright, and aside from all the issues he was having with the ADD or the ADHD, um, he he was so smart and so resourceful and so helpful and so kind-hearted. It just once in a blue moon, he would just wig out, and the so I got this hot dog cart for him. I thought, when I was 9, I was already working. I was delivering 300 papers before school for the Detroit News, and I thought, I'm going to get him something that maybe he'd have an interest in, and he can uh, maybe that will help, so we can wean him off the drugs. that the hospital had him on all zombied out on. So I get him this hot dog cart. And he's excited. He just, he sees that cart and he thinks, I can have this. I can do this. He says, yes, Nathan, you can operate this just like when I was your age. I was pretty entrepreneurish. I did a lot of things, selling flowers and delivering newspapers and shoveling snow. And this is, I guess, the modern day version of what I used to do as a kid. I mean, when I was your age, I was doing things, to make money. And he was really excited. And I remember, within days, he had a menu all made up. He had probably 10 or 15 different names of hot dogs that, with all different types of toppings. And um, he, uh, and then within a week, he had already worked out a deal with a bike store in Holland, Michigan, to be able to set up the hot dog cart on the weekends. Um, and he was just that into it, and he even had an account set up with Gordon Food Service. He did all this on his own, and I was so amazed that the change that simple thing did for him. And and then opening day came for him, and he needed an adult to sign on the for the application for the health department, so he could open up his hot dog stand. And no, and the um, the health department came out and said that it was okay for him to um, open up. He passed the inspection, but right behind the health department came the um, the city official that shut him down for zoning violations. the, the building official in Holland um, said that he couldn't operate where he was operating because of existing zoning ordinances. So then that became a battle. It, I had to appeal that, and within a few weeks, we had a hearing before the city council, and in that period between the time he was shut down and the time that we had the hearing before city council, there was a lot of media coverage on that. If you were to Google that, I'm sure you'd find a bunch of articles on it, and there's actually some on my YouTube channel about that episode. It He was getting calls and interviews from radio stations and TV stations all across the world. He was getting contacted by news organizations in Germany and England and Australia. Yeah, he was getting contacts from. He had an invitation to go to the Glenn Beck show. That shutdown of a 13-year-old trying to sell some hot dogs created a lot of publicity, which was good for him, but it ended up really hurting me because I went to court representing that woman in the counterfeiting case for her sentencing hearing, and on the heels of all that press, and the court called the case, but everybody had a different demeanor on their faces. They weren't as happy to see me as they normally were, and actually, it, between the time that we had the plea hearing and the time that we had the sentencing hearing, I got a call from one of the court clerks asking me if I'd be interested in doing some court appointed stuff because the judge was so impressed with how I handled Ms. Rogers' case. And I don't believe I ever gave her an answer to that. But getting back to the day of sentencing, the court honored the sentencing agreement, the plea agreement that we all entered into at the previous hearing, and she, left the courtroom. But then they had me stay. Apparently, the judge or someone on the judge's staff had seen one of the news interviews or news reports or something involving the hot dog cart. And I was always introduced by the media back then as a paralegal that recently moved to Holland from Sterling Heights, and someone seen that So when I got to the sentencing hearing, I ended up going to jail for practicing law without a license. So I'm all too familiar with that statute. Um, they and I spent a lot of time locked up because of that, because they enhanced it. What should have been a misdemeanor, they bumped it up into a felony, and then it lawyerdom doesn't like to share, and that's what it all boiled down to, and that's what I was gonna bring up as I challenged the practicing law without a license statute, because it. Um, I remember, what I charged that woman to get her out of trouble from three different agencies. I charged her $5,000. If she would have hired a law firm, any of the firms that I ever worked for, even some of the low end firms when I first started as a paralegal, she would have had to spend at least a $50,000 or more, um, and hope that and probably not even get that type of result. So um, she fared really well under me, but then like I said, in the end, I ended up getting in a lot of trouble for that. So when I tell you that um, I'm not an attorney and I'm not giving you legal advice, I say that very seriously, because I've already been in trouble for that before, and I don't want to um, get in trouble for that again. Now, it's not to say that I won't go back and try to challenge that somewhere down the road, but right now I think there's more important things to work on than me worrying about that issue. We need to have some serious, meaningful conversations about the homelessness, our outdated infrastructure, our um, well, our social programs, providing meaningful assistance. There's so many areas that we need to spend time thinking about, um, instead of what's going on everywhere else. And that seems to be the main focus of our leaders now. They just want to, you know, give places like Ukraine a blank check and give other countries, free money. It's not that. I know some people like to think that, or feel that the United States is the world's ATM. We're not an ATM for the world, because, when you use an ATM, both sides have cash. The machine has cash, and your account has cash, or you're trying to put cash in. But either way, there's money there. So it's not we're not the world's ATM. In reality, we're the world's Department of Human Services. That because we give, and then we never expect anything in return, or very seldomly. And when we do, we usually end up with the short end of the stick. So it all this stuff needs to be looked at. We really need to. It all starts with having some meaningful dialogue, and um, putting together a plan in a nonviolent way. I think the uh, uh, the solutions that we need to pursue rest in places like behind me, the courthouse, and then in the voting booth. Instead of electing the same people that we do over and over and over again, based on their political affiliation, or the color of their tie, or because they're cute, or because they made a good TikTok dance video at some point in their life. You know, these are no reasons to elect our leadership, and we we need to pay better attention on who we vote for. Because the days of them saying that we need to hire experienced politicians, where's experienced politicians gotten us? Look where we're at today, and you know we've listened to all that, and it's not about whether or not these people went to an Ivy League college, because many of the leaders that we've had now and in our past have come from Ivy League colleges, and look where we're at. So we can't just keep electing people because they're a Republican or they're a Democrat or because they graduated from an Ivy League school versus a community college. You know, we need to look at people based on uh, who they are and what they've done and what they've experienced. We need leaders that know what it's like to suffer. We need leaders that have slept in their car, have been homeless, have gone. There's been many nights where to feed my four-legged kids, I ate ramen noodles. Because I want to make sure that just because I'm experiencing a hardship doesn't mean that they should. So we need those type of leaders. We need the type of leaders that can really truly understand the needs of our nation. And right now, we don't have those. Not enough of them anyway. I'm sure there's a few up there, but that the few that we have out there trying, they're so outnumbered that they they're just spinning their wheels. So at this point, we just need to rethink how we view who we should vote for and who we shouldn't vote for in a different way than from what we've been doing. Because experience and where they went to school, none of that seems to matter. Because, like I said, we've already hired the experience, we've already hired the Ivy League, and we're in the worse shape now than I've ever seen in my entire life. I remember, and that's remembering myself in the '70s being stuck in gas lines for an hour and a half, waiting for our 10 gallons of gas that we were allowed to purchase because of the shortages and the way that things, as bad as things were then. Obviously, we don't have the rationing of fuel yet, but that's not to say that won't come. You know, it, if we don't start doing something different now, it's not going to get better, and it'll only get worse. We're at a point where if you were to take a bowling ball and our problems are going to accelerate at a much faster pace now, similar to if you took this bowling ball and you took it to the top of an on-ramp to a highway and you pushed it onto the highway, and as it started to roll down the ramp, it goes faster and faster and faster. Well, that's where we're at. We have so many problems going on right now, and they're accelerating at such a fast pace that it can only continue to accelerate at that pace and faster from this point forward. So we don't have much time. It's time to move and move in a different direction. And I hope that many of you will get involved. Like I said, go to the website. It's www.nonconformistpodcast.org and sign up. This is Shaitan, my 5-year-old troublemaker and hat thief, and and participate. And if you can contribute, there is um, a place on the homepage of that site to donate. If you can donate, that would be helpful. Um, if you can't donate cash, well, there's other ways. There's if you can donate even ink cartridges, paper, envelopes, stamps, um, just general office supplies. You want to volunteer some of your time. Um, if you have a legal background and you want to help with uh, the issues that we'll be dealing with on that front, um, you're more than welcome to help. Um, I wouldn't say no to any assistance at this point because we need as many people working together as we possibly can get that to possibly even have any chance of getting our country back on the right path. Well, I'm going to close with that right now. I hope this live stream worked out well. It's the first time I'm using it, and being in a different location, set up differently. I will be anxious to see how this turned out. Watching it later on, but again, stay tuned and stay safe, and most importantly, always be the best nonconformist you can be. And if you don't know how to be one, join our podcast, and I'm sure that over time you'll learn how to become one. With that said, y'all have a blessed night, and thank you for listening.